Well, I didn't actually think I'd be doing this today because, well, the weather's been absolutely shocking. And it's not that much better now, but I think according to this weather app on the iPhone, which I'm sorry, it's not exactly Nostradamus. When it comes to the weather, it's a bit of a joke, but it is actually sunny and raining at the same time. I just got a belting picture of a rainbow out there, which was pretty cool. I don't know if I can see it from here. I'll have a look in a sec. Oh. Don't know if no, I can't see it from here. But anyway, oh, it's gone. Great. Well, anyway, I got a photo of it. But yeah, stick up on something. It's starting to rain again. Honest to God, the weather in this dump is an absolute joke. Oh. Anyhow, we'll try and get this done. Remember I think it was last Monday I had to abandon it because of the weather app being an arsehole on my phone. And here we are a week later and it's doing the same thing. It's a dumpster fire. Mind you, at the moment, you see, because I'm under trees, it's kind of difficult to know whether it's just the water being held on the leaves. But we'll crack on. So, I did my Sunday stroll where I outlined basically the manifesto for my YouTube channel and what I will do and what I won't do. But this is a Walkie Talkie, so we're back about video games. And there is something to talk about here because Microsoft are never going to be a disappointment when it comes to giving me content at the moment. So they've announced what I think most people knew was going to happen once Gears and Forza had gone over to the PlayStation, and that is Halo. Halo is now coming to the PS5 next year in the form of, well, it's not a remaster of the original Halo. It's a complete rebuild of the original Halo Combat Evolved. Let me just pick my way through this. The weather's been absolutely atrocious. It's wet, it's freezing cold, perfect storm for nonsense and bullshit. But yeah, so Halo is finding its way there. I'm pretty sure that bike shouldn't be there. That looks like it's one of them bikes you rent or hire. Anyway, so a lot of people are excited. A lot of people going, oh, it's great, and sell it, saying, oh yeah, it is great from one aspect, and then you get the people saying, well, Xbox is dead, isn't that great? And that's where I say absolutely not. No, it's not great. It's not great at all. In fact, first of all, I don't actually believe that to be the case. But second of all, if it is, there's no way that is great. There's no way that that's good. And I'll go into detail with that when I get to the park. Because got a lot to say about it. So, I will see you in the park. Right. I don't think the weather knows what the hell it wants to do, to be honest with you. But this app is on my phone, it's fired. It's shit. So, yeah. So the people that were sort of celebrating, I've seen online, reveling in the apparent demise of Xbox. I don't think that's going to happen. Microsoft have said that they're looking at developing a future console. I have heard that it's going to be a console PC hybrid. It's either, it'll probably, I mean, from what I've heard, the rumour is it'll be about $1,000. At that price, you're looking at probably a mid-range PC. I mean, depending on the tech. I mean, my PC is starting to struggle with some games, and it was a £2,500 PC. That was a high-end gaming rig a couple of years ago. When I say struggle, it's not in terms of frames, it's actually in terms of the fans kicking off, which means that it's getting hot. The GPU and the CPU probably getting a bit hot, and I don't like having the fans coming on at high speed because I don't think that's doing your chipset any good. So, yeah, the only way I suppose it could be a hybrid is that you actually have a console mode on there which enables you to switch to and play games. You know, in the software, you know, like you have an option to boot it up as a PC or boot it up as an Xbox, but it's still a PC. I mean, that's just going to be something in software that does that, and that's something, frankly, you can do on a PC. You know, just that's all it's going to be. I mean, games are programmed on PC, so it's only an issue of compatibility. That's the issue there. So I think when you look at it, it's what is it going to be? It's going to be a PC that'll have an Xbox mode in it, and you'll just boot it up as an Xbox or a PC. I guess that's what, if it is going to be a hybrid, that's what it'll be like. But it's still a PC, like I say, and at that price, you're looking at best a mid-tier PC. But anyway, that's getting off the subject because I don't know anything about that. That nobody does at the moment because it's all speculation. But the issue with Halo 5 going over to console in the mind of these people is who think it's the end of Xbox. They're putting RIP Xbox, smiley face, you know, the usual sort of fanboys reveling in it. Why is that a good thing again? You know, go ahead. I'm going to wait for somebody to explain why it's a good thing. Because I bet you they can't. They go, yeah, well, it's the end of Xbox. That's great. Really? So you think that companies that don't have competition will behave in a manner that will be in the best interests of you, the consumer? Do you seriously think that's how companies behave? No, they don't. They don't. It'll be a disaster. It'll be a complete and utter disaster for us, the consumer, and for the games industry. Why? Because lack of competition breeds complacency. And if you think it's been bad, look how Sony behaved when they had competition when the PS3 come out. Look how badly that launch was handled. Look how expensive it was. Look how incredibly difficult to program for it. Why multi-platform releases were superior on the 360 by and large than they were on the PS3. The PS3 almost had shovelware by comparison, because Sony were arrogant. They didn't see Microsoft as serious competition because Sony had run away with it with the PlayStation 2 generation. Now, if a company is going to behave like that, well, it does have physical competition out there in the field. What's it going to be like when it doesn't? Because, yeah, Nintendo is still in the party with their hardware, thank God. But they're not really marketing themselves in competition with Sony. They're doing their own thing. They're doing their own thing by and large. And that's where they've succeeded. When they tried to go toe-to-toe with Microsoft and Sony in terms of console power with the GameCube, it didn't work out too well for them. And they knew they were going to get into a console arms race that they would struggle to win. You know, they didn't have money from other divisions that they could, you know, use to tide the company over until, you know, if it ran into any kind of difficulty. They couldn't really afford to do that because they're just about games and hardware. That's it, like Sega was. And they quickly realised that. And that's why the Wii, when it came out, they changed the focus to make it more of something that would be motion control. They created something that, I think at the time, I mean, I don't know how true it was, but at the time the general feeling was as they'd repurposed quite a bit of the GameCube's architecture with the Wii, which makes good sense when you think about it. It kept the costs of the development down of the Wii. They could focus on a different experience, which was motion control, and it was hugely successful for them. You know, and then they did the Wii U. The Wii U didn't work out too well for them. That was down to poor marketing, not because it was necessarily a poor console. But the point is that Microsoft and Sony have kept each other honest in a way. Go back to the launch of the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One. I think it's safe to say that Microsoft's plans were not the greatest for Xbox One. And what did Sony do? They gave people what they wanted. They listened to the feedback. They saw what Microsoft was doing, and they went down the route of, let's go back to basics. Let's give people, first and foremost, a top of the drawer, powerful games console. And that's what we're going to build it around, games. A games console. They tried that multimedia stuff with the PS3, that's what inflated the price. Sticking in an operating system that would allow you to use it as almost like a PC. I say almost because it wasn't really, but you know, they had all these SD card readers built into the original. They had hardware backwards compatibility to the PS2, and I don't know if it was hardware or software, but compatibility back to the PS1, all built in, day one, you know. So when you take all that in mind, you know, they stuck a Blu-ray drive in there, which actually ultimately proved to be the smart thing, because that helped them win the high definition format wars. For those of you that either don't remember, have forgotten, or weren't in around that time, there was two formats. There was HD DVD, that was one format, and then married to that there was Blu-ray in competition. Microsoft avoided putting in a built-in HD DVD player. They kept a DVD player in there. The idea of that was to keep the costs down. They kept the cost down. But they did release a HD DVD player as an add-on. It wasn't very good. It was noisy, it was cumbersome. It wasn't really a very good showcase for a HD DVD. It wasn't a very good showcase for it at all, to be honest. And so, you know, Sony, with the PS3, almost by default really won that format war. And it's strange to think that there was a format war in physical media back in 2005 and 2006, 20 years ago. It doesn't seem 20 years ago, but it was. And it's just incredible to think, you know, incredible to think that, you know, that was a thing back then. But the fact was, Microsoft outdid the PS3. On paper, one argued that the PS3 was more powerful, but it was difficult to code for. It had a cell processor architecture which a lot of developers didn't like. It was difficult to get it to do what it did, and I don't think it was any coincidence that the best games that came out on it, the best looking games, the best performing games, were first party. Well, Microsoft, because of the success of the 360, because of that success, when Sony went away to do the PS4, made them go back to the drawing board, made them go back to basics. What did people love about the PS2? What did people love about the PlayStation? It was a games console first and foremost. And with the PS4 they did put a Blu-ray drive in, but by that point it was cheaper. Blu-ray drives were cheaper, so it wasn't going to have a big impact on the cost. They did that, and then they stuck the console out there. It was cheaper than the Xbox One. It wasn't being marketed as a multimedia thing, as well as a games console. They focused entirely on games. Their motto at that time was, it's for the players. And it worked. PS4 was a monumental success. It beat the Xbox One. Microsoft lost ground. You know, all of the success and goodwill that had been built up with the Xbox 360, I mean, it survived the whole Red Rings of Death debacle. That's how popular it was. That's how people liked it. You know, it survived all of that. And why? Because it was a great console at its heart, and because Microsoft were going to do whatever it took to beat out PlayStation. They knew they wanted to make something for gamers. But that's not what they did. With the Xbox One, Microsoft got complacent. Looks like they're going to start blowing leaves around the place in a pointless fashion, so I'll head back this way. And this generation kicked off. What did Microsoft do with the Series X? They went back to giving what people wanted, a powerful games machine. It was all about the games. What did they do a few years ago? You know, at the start of this generation, they started acquiring major software publishers, Activision, ZeniMax, which gave them huge franchises like Gears of War, The Elder Scrolls, Doom. Not Gears of War, Call of Duty, sorry. They already had that. You know, and you add that to their catalogue, the Gears, kind of jumped ahead a bit. You know, they had Gears, they've got Halo, they had Forza. And at the time, I wasn't really that bothered about getting an Xbox Series X, but when they got those, and I thought, well, they're going to come to Xbox. There's no way they're coming to PlayStation. Because I had a PS5, so, and I was enjoying that, and I thought, well, I can't see them releasing these games on PlayStation. Doom's not going to be on there. Elder Scrolls isn't going to be on there. You know. So I went out and I saved up. And I got an Xbox Series X. And it's a great console. It does what it does really well. It's a cracking piece of kit. It really is. And then over the course of this generation, you've had, you know, fairly limp offerings. Halo Infinite had so much promise, and yet it didn't deliver. You know, single player was a bit of a non-event, really. The single player campaign. I don't do multiplayer. I mean, we were promised this huge open world, and well, it's open world, but I wouldn't describe it as huge. Gears of War 5, or Gears 5 as they called it. Why, I don't know. Again, supposedly big open world Gears game, totally uninspiring, forgettable, boring. You're going around on this bloody sled thing, and once again, you're not playing as Marcus Phoenix. You're playing as this woman character. I can't even remember her name. Is it Kat? Kate? I don't know. no idea, can't remember. I can tell you everything that happened in the original Gears trilogy. Set pieces, characters, you know, all of that stuff. Can tell you all of that. And I can even tell you a little bit with Gears of War 4. Gears 5. I can't tell you a damn thing about that. I can't remember a thing. All I remember is going around on a sled to various locations, doing a bit of fighting, then back on the sled thing, going around again. You know, that's it. I can't even remember the name of the principal character in that game. So what does that tell you? Now, so they just seem to squander it. They just seem to blow it. You know. And then there's the announcement that all of these exclusives are now going to come out on PS5. PCs are not direct competition for consoles. I don't care what anybody says. A top of the line gaming PC, or even a decent gaming PC, is out of the reach of most people. Games consoles have always been about affordability and ease of access, and what I've heard used, and it's a very good term that Laura Fry has coined this phrase in a recent video she did where she was talking about the ROG Ally. She called it the ROG Ally, so I'm guessing that's how it is pronounced. She said in that video about frictionless interaction. And that's a great phrase. Frictionless interaction. Walking past all of that racket. I forgot what the hell I was talking about. I know I was talking about Laura Fry referring to a frictionless interface. So, yeah, we'll try and pick it up. It's about ease of use. Apparently the ROG Ally isn't user-friendly out of the box. I don't know, I've not got one, but that's what she was saying. People were complaining. Apparently accessing one of the buttons is tricky because it's located sort of right next to, or just above and to the left of the right analog stick, which means in the heat of action you're going to catch the right analog stick going for it. Anyway, that's by the by. That's a topic for something else. What I'm saying is that Microsoft, Sony, from a hardware perspective, have kept each other honest. You know, as I say, when Microsoft acquired all of those game studios, in addition to their own library that they had, that was what compelled me to get a Series X. I wish I hadn't bothered now, because it's pretty clear that they're not going to put games exclusively onto the Series X. Their main first-party games are going over to PS5, and Halo, you know, the Halo game is an absolute confirmation of that, because that was the last of their major franchises. It's almost like they've held on to it, they've held it out, held out their whole reveal of that, held it back, Magpie. They've held that back, and now, you know, they've announced it. But it's not just, they're not just porting the remaster that was on the Master Chief Collection. You know, and almost like to celebrate this, we're rebuilding it from the ground up. And I just think that's one in the eye, to be honest with you. I think it's one in the eye for people that invested in the Series X. What the hell did I buy it for? What did I spend 400 quid on it, 400 and odd quid on it for? Because I bought a couple of games with it when I got it. The only time I'm turning it on now is to play the F1 game that's on there. And to be honest, I can get that on PC and I can get it on PS5. So it's just a dust magnet. And it's sad, because does anybody out there think that if there's no serious competition for Sony going forward with the with the PS6, do you think a company that has already shown its preparedness to act in an anti-consumer way when it did have competition isn't going to do that when there's virtually nobody on the field for them? No. They'll do whatever they want, and you'll have no alternative unless you've got an absolute shed load of money and can go and buy a decent PC. And I know you can build gaming PCs for 600-700 quid, but they're going to be a generation or so behind. You're not going to be getting the real, you know, up-to-date, cutting-edge technology that you would get when you buy a new games console. If you want to do that with a PC, you need a few grand. You need a few grand. So you'll need a shed load of money. Or you'll have to be subservient to whatever Sony give you. And they'll just do whatever they want. You know, they've patented down the years a lot of things that gamers wouldn't be too happy about. Believe me. Don't look at Sony as some wonderful guardian of your games. They're not. They have done some real shithouse things down the years. They really have. When the PS2 come out, for example, if you were connecting, what lead was it now? It wasn't HDMI, that wasn't a thing, really. I'm trying to remember. One of the connections that gave you the best picture quality would turn a DVD image green. And this was to prevent copying. Yeah. So you couldn't watch films. I think it was component cables, or was it SCART? I can't remember which one it was now, but yeah, it turned the image green. I had to buy a disc that actually turned that feature off. I think it installed something onto a memory card. I've still got it actually, but yeah, I had to buy something that circumnavigated this stupid thing that they were doing at the time. Really, really consumer friendly, eh? You know, Sony are notorious for doing anti-consumer things. Wasn't it Sony that got Play Asia shut down? That used to sell imports into Europe, like, you know, Japanese PS2s and Japanese games. I'm pretty sure it was Sony that got them shut down. You know, at a time where there were certain games that were coming out on the PS3 that you couldn't actually get in Europe or even in the US. I remember the original Demon's Souls for the longest time you couldn't get in Europe. I remember that. It was, it sucked. The only way you could get it was importing it. And eventually they did release it officially in Europe, but that was just due to an obscene amount of demand. But why not release it anyway? You know, they're not some virtuous organisation that you want to have a stranglehold or a monopoly on the games industry. Like hell. And as we've already established, Nintendo don't position themselves in direct competition with the likes of Sony and Microsoft. You know, they put themselves out there on a separate platform. So, you know, what are you going to do? You need Microsoft in that console market space, and you need them to be strong. They need new leadership in the Xbox division, is what they need. I get where Phil Spencer's coming from. I like Phil Spencer, but he's not the right man for the job. He's not the right man for the job. And the really weird thing about all of this is Xbox was a good thing for Microsoft. They've never had a great reputation. Laura Fryers talks about this when she was working there, that when she would visit companies, you know, she kind of wanted to hide the bag that she had that had Microsoft on it, because their reputation for years has been absolute dirt. It really has. You know, I remember back in the day, back Windows 95, Windows 98, people hated Microsoft. They hated them because they basically did away with competition. And in some cases, the competition had superior products to them. You know, they either bought out that competition or they just outmuscled it because it had more financial clout. You know, and she says, but when Xbox came along, it was cool. You know, it was a good thing for Microsoft. It improved their reputation. They became a cool company. The Xbox was a cool brand. Look at it now. It's ruined. They've ruined it. And there's no real reason for it. And that's what makes my blood boil. There's no real reason for it. Yeah, everything's an Xbox now. No, it's not. No, it's not. They don't get it. That's not what people want. I don't want to play my AAA video game on a bastard iPhone. I want to play it on a giant fucking TV. I don't want to play Gears of War on an iPad. I want to play it on a 100-inch, £3 million HD TV. That's ideal for me. I want to play this stuff on as big a screen as I can, not on something that is going to probably make me get massive amounts of eye strain, or something, you know, that, yeah, it runs it, but the visual fidelity is rubbish. No, an Xbox is that box you connected to your TV that you played games on. That's an Xbox. The clue is in the name. It's not an X phone, it's not an X pad, it's an Xbox. And they need somebody to get back into that company and grab it by the horns and say, no, you're not having these franchises that we've paid a stack load of money to get our hands on by acquiring these companies. Sony did that. Sony did that back in the 90s. They bought up a stack load of developers, they signed exclusivity deals, and they had to keep stuff off of other consoles so people would buy the PlayStation. It's like Microsoft were doing right, they were doing well. But it's just a perfect storm of nonsense that they've engaged in now. Sticking the price up of Game Pass, sticking the price up of the console, releasing the crown jewels on all and sundry, taking away what an Xbox is by stating that you don't even need it to play Microsoft games on. How stupid can you get? How ridiculous is that? It's almost like the people running the company don't fundamentally understand what gamers want. Gamers aren't playing core video games on tiny devices. They're not. They're just not. And if Microsoft do end up bailing out of the hardware marketplace, or they just end up marketing their stuff as no longer being for the average gamer, only for the wealthy or for those who are not bothered, Sony are going to run riot. They'll do whatever they want, mark my words. Everything that you could conceivably think of being bad that works for a corporation's short-term gain but is not in the interests of the long-term or the mid-term for the consumer, they will do. They will do, because they've already dipped their toe in that water, and the only reason they didn't follow through with it is because that water got heated up by the success of the Xbox brand. If that's not there, they're going to dive in. And then what are we going to have? And that's why the idea of Halo, Gears, Forza, and the stuff that they've put out there from companies that they've acquired recently in the last sort of 5 to 10 years, it's why that is the worst idea. Now, whether it comes from Phil Spencer, or whether he's just enacting what's come from up on high, because ultimately, you know, everything stops with the main people running Microsoft, not just Xbox. If that's the case, well, thanks for the memories. And I'm not just saying that for the Xbox brand, I'm saying that for the games industry as a whole, because it will become a nightmare. It will. It's not just being a doom merchant, it's just facts. Because we've seen them trying to push in these directions before. Like I say. So yeah, that's my thoughts on why I think celebrating Halo going over to PlayStation 5 and somehow thinking it's great if that does spell doom for the Xbox brand, why I think it's silly. I think it's daft. So I'm going to head off now because it's starting to look a bit dodgy in certain places in this sky. So I'll see you all in the next one. I'll catch you later.